Hello everyone. This is Yana Smakula for SimonsSaysStamp.com. Welcome back for another Yippee for Yana video. If you live in a warmer climate, you probably enjoy beautiful greenery outside all year round. But if you're like me and live in one of the colder parts of the world, chances are by now you are dreaming of spring, double-digit temperatures if you're using Celsius system, or maybe above 60 degrees Fahrenheit weather, and some nice greenery and flowers. Since spring won't be getting to my neck of the woods for another few weeks, I'm browsing for spring online and I'm trying to recreate it in my handmade cards. Today I'm bringing you a simple to make floral friendship card. I picked a few current favorites for this card, starting with a quilted hearts background stamp from Simon Says Stamp. Even though it's a stamp filled with heart images, it can be used all year round, not just for love or Valentine's Day type cards. The cards here are so tiny, they make a perfect background for any card you might want to make. But of course, it also works for Valentine's Day if you like. Here's one of the test backgrounds I did recently, where I heat embossed this background in white embossing powder on red cardstock for some classy Valentine. For the card I have in mind today, I will be embossing it on light blue paper. Next, I have Moments of Grace stamp set. You've probably seen it being used a bunch of times already. It's a stunning set for sympathy cards, but it also features several beautiful floral images. The size of the images is great for some quick coloring. The flowers are not too big nor too small, and that makes coloring them a very doable task. One last stamp set I want to use today is the BESTIE set by Kathy Zilski. I'll be using the large friend stamp from here and coordinating die. I've started working on my card by creating a background. I have my MISTI stamping tool. I've removed the black foam insert from the MISTI, as I'll be using a cling stamp today, and you need to remove the black insert if you're not working with a clear stamps. I always do this when I work with rubber stamps, but I never remember to mention this, so I thought I would do this in this video just as a reminder. Also, I thought I would show you how I can make an easy to open handle for your MISTI. This is nothing new, but it does make it super easy to open the MISTI door. Just add a little handle using washi tape. To attach the cardstock inside my MISTI, since my paper is actually cut smaller than my stamp and there's no way to hold it down with the magnets, I'm using a piece of washi tape and creating a little double-sided sticky piece to hold it in place. I actually also use this trick when I need to make a photo of my card and the card base will not stay closed. It's very helpful. Because I want to heat emboss my background, it's important to treat the paper with an anti-static powder to prevent embossing powder from sticking to any fingerprints that I might have left on the paper or other possible greasy areas on my cardstock. I like to add some powder onto the paper. This is anti-static powder. And next, use a dry paintbrush. I usually use a flat 1-inch wide brush and just spread the powder somewhat equally all over my panel. To stamp the image, I'm using Simon Says Stamp embossing ink. This is clear, sticky ink that is actually perfect to use with embossing powder or for watermark stamping if you want to have that tone-on-tone look on your projects. Once my image is inked, I'm closing the door of my MISTI and pressing down to transfer the ink onto the paper. It looks good enough, and now I can add my embossing powder. I decided to use the Hero Arts White Satin Pearl powder for this background. It's a beautiful powder that gives nice pearlescent results on any cardstock. The powder is actually not white, but it's also not clear. It gives a beautiful shimmery coverage and looks especially gorgeous on non-white papers. That's where that shimmer pops. I've preheated my heat tool and now I'm simply going over my panel to melt the powder and set it in place. Here's a closer look and hopefully you can catch all of that shine on the paper. Clear embossing powder will not give you the same result. Next, I'm going to stamp the word friend from the BESTIES stamp set from Kathy Zilski. And this time I'm using my mini MISTI stamping tool and stamping this image in Cloudy Sky ink on white cardstock. Because this stamp has a lot of solid areas to it, I'm stamping it a few times for the best impression. I also want to stamp a little sentiment that reads, "Thank you for being my," and I'm stamping it in black ink. This sentiment also comes from the same BESTIES stamp set from Cassie Zielski. The ink on the word friend will even out over time. This kind of ink needs a few minutes to absorb into the paper. Once it does that, it will no longer look splotchy, but will even out and will look much better. You just have to be patient with this type of ink and give it the time it needs to do its thing. Here, a few minutes later, it already looks much better. Next, I'm stamping a few images from the Moments of Grace stamp set in intense black ink from Simon Says Stamp on my white paper. I'm using this specific ink as I plan to color images with Copic markers, and this ink will not bleed when it comes in contact with alcohol from my Copic markers. I'm not quite sure how many images I will need, so I'm stamping multiples of each to have enough for my card. Here, I'm using cardstock scraps from my stash. I have lots of little bits and pieces of white cardstock laying around, and I'm always wanting to get rid of them, but I don't want to just toss them. So I've been trying to use them lately for stamping some elements for my cards. Typically, my cardstock is pre-cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panels, and I often reach for a full new panel even if I need to stamp a small image, but I've been trying to use my scraps first now. To color these images, I'm using Copic markers. Nothing fancy, just 2 or 3 color blends, and I'm using my go-to colors. This is not the card where I want to experiment with new-to-be color combinations, although I love doing that. Today, I'm using what I know works well. In this case, it's YG03 and YG17 markers to color the greenery for the card. For the flowers, I'm using pinks, and today those are RV11, RV10, and RV00 markers. I also later added a hint of RV13 color to the inside of the flower petals to intensify the color on these areas as it was looking a little bit too pale for my taste. There are coordinating dies available for all of these images, and you can see that I've already die cut my flowers, my leaves, and even the word friend out. The little black sentiment was trimmed into a skinny strip, and I added a V shape at one of the ends using my scissors. Next, I turned my background panel to 3 7/8 inches by 5 1/8 of an inch. You can also do 4 by 5 1/4 inches. And I also cut a piece of white fun foam, just slightly smaller, to foam mount my panel with its help. Now, my rule of thumb is, however large or small my panel is, my fun foam layer is to be cut about 1/4 inch smaller, so that it's not visible or less visible from the side of the card. I've added double-sided tape to the fun foam to adhere it onto the back of my background panel. I also created an A2 white side folding card base to adhere my panel on top of it in the center. Next, I need to plan the image placement. I've positioned the word friend, and I want my flowers and leaves to come from behind of this word. So I'm basically using the florals one by one and planning the placement and adhering them in place using glue. You don't want to rush here. It's better to add them one by one and just secure them in place with some washi tape first, and then use glue to make sure that particular image is going to stay exactly where you plan it on your card. This part took me about 5 minutes. I mean, it's pretty lengthy to adhere all the pieces and decide on their placement, but I'm glad I took my time as it ended up exactly where I envisioned each of those pieces on the project. Once that was done, I brought my foam adhesive squares and foam mounted the entire word and flower clusters onto the card. I did leave 2 leaves separate as I was planning to adhere them directly onto the background without using foam adhesive squares, but with the help of glue. I also trimmed many of the image stems today to make them a better fit for this card. Lastly, I added that sentiment that was stamped in black, and I just tucked it under one of the leaves. I couldn't resist adding a few embellishments as always, an enamel heart and some sequins from the Girls Best Friend sequin mix. I hope you guys will give this idea a try. If you do, make a card inspired by this video. We'd love it if you shared your project online and tagged us. We always enjoy seeing what you make. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet done so. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye!